Hello, my name is Jim Stevenson. I'm the medical director for Diamond Healthcare. And today, this webinar is being offered basically as a source of support to all of the medical directors across the country who provide services at Diamond Healthcare operations, inpatient and outpatient. These facilities are everywhere from the state of California to New York to Florida to West Virginia to Texas, all over the country. And I welcome all of you to this few minutes of your time. It feels a little bit strange for me to be offering any sorts of support or advice to all of you, since on a daily basis you're in the front lines dealing with the current COVID-19 crisis that we are in. And as being in the front line, you are expected to be leaders, not just certainly by us or by your units or by your programs, but by your patients, by your communities, as well as your families. I mean, when you think about it, who has a better handle on this thing than we, at least from an intellectual standpoint and a knowledge standpoint? And so we have to offer that as a constant support to our patients, our staffs, and certainly our families and communities. It doesn't mean we have the answers, of course, but at least we can speak with some clarification to points that become very confusing and lost on much of the community that we deal with. Hopefully, this is a once in a lifetime experience. Quite frankly, it's likely to be for people such as myself. However, for most of you, that is unlikely. And I think we're all starting to recognize this. Unusually, one of the positive things that might come from this event is that we'll be way more ready the next time, because this is teaching us to rapidly deploy new means of manufacturing of important equipment, and then sending those equipment pieces to where they belong, where they're needed most immediately. It also is likely to lead to additional patient care approaches that will be helpful in the future. But maybe even most importantly, our pharmaceutical industry has become incredibly impressive in its ability to identify means of testing that we are now implementing as of we speak for 5-minute results as to whether an individual is or is not infected by COVID-19. And I'm looking forward to a time when we'll be able to nearly as rapidly identify any new virus and understand how to develop and to actually manufacture vaccines way more quickly to get them to market. And I think that's possible. So whereas that's not a whole lot for us to look forward to now, at least for the future, I think this will set a new standard. You know, as I said earlier, as medical directors, you're looked to by everyone for your leadership. And that includes, to some degree, mitigating the anxiety that is somewhat evident as a natural outcome of this unknown area that we're in right now in regards to this virus. I'm sure that you feel it yourselves. And it's for darn sure that those around you feel it, and they have even less information or understanding than you do of these things. So one of your responsibilities, which is pretty intuitive to all of us as physicians, is to assume that leadership and that calming, by offering reassurance and explanation and supporting the guidelines that have been presented to us, because they actually seem to be working. If you were watching television last night, you probably are aware that the curves of the rate of infection from this virus have flattened in some areas, the West Coast in particular, as they were very early on in introducing isolation into their communities. And even last night, it was indicated that the state of New York has seen a bit of a decrease in the rate of infection, new infection, which would portend well for the things that we are doing under the advice of CDC. So reminding people to wash their hands and sanitize their hands frequently, to clean surfaces, simple surfaces, including the push button on your car and the doorknobs, etc., to keep them clean. Things such as that are being aware of these things and sharing that on a frequent basis is very important. Um, you want to remind people that social distancing is probably the most important thing that they can do. They should also take their temperatures on a daily basis, and to keep their hands away from their faces, including their eyes. Um, and these are ways that do seem to effectively mitigate the spread of this virus. But no matter what you do, anxiety will be there, and one of your roles will be to help folks deal with that, discussing it and getting it out in the open. It can't hide. It's just too overwhelming in some cases. I think it does help to empower people somewhat when they feel out of control. And with your leadership on your units, you might try implementing such things as checking pulse oximetry on a regular basis. We can do this at change of shift because we do take pulses regularly. And then we can follow the oxygen levels of our patients on a regular basis, daily or multiple times a day. We may be able to identify patients who are more prone to these infections that are starting to develop those infections. That is, those folks who are immune deficient or the older population. It's an odd virus in that the experience of a high temperature sometimes um, occurs quite late in the infection process. And the first place we might recognize it is through the lungs. And so if we see the oxygenation levels dropping and certainly approaching the low 90s to 90, then we know that we need to become a whole lot more intensive in our medical oversight of that given individual. The use of masks is something that's being discussed right now at the national level. The mitigating issue there, of course, is the availability of masks for those who are frontline in the med-surg areas, emergency areas, et cetera. However, even the use of lower of masks for less intensive situations, such as we should find in our hospitals, might be useful, and would also give both our patients, ourselves, and our coworkers a sense of some control. And we might go to the community to get assistance in making cloth masks that can be taken home and washed every evening. Um, I guess I just want to end by encouraging all of you, again, giving my sincere gratitude on behalf of Diamond Healthcare for the sacrifices you're making now. Likely you're working a bit longer and a whole lot harder. You're under the guise of a threat that is unknown and quite frankly scary. Be confident that you know that we'll get through. And at the other end, we'll be much wiser and we'll know how to mitigate these issues better in the future as they occur. And in the meantime, be supportive of your families and your communities and know that we appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you.